Marcellus set out with his whole army and came to Syracuse. He proceeded to attack the city by land and sea. Appius leading up the land forces, and he himself having a fleet of 60 ships filled with all sorts of arms and missiles. He'd erected an engine of artillery on a huge supported by 8 galleys fastened together, and with this the city wall, confidently relying on the extent and splendor of his equipment and his own great fame. But all this proved to be of no account in the eyes of Archimedes, and in comparison with the engines of Archimedes. To these he had by no means devoted himself as work worthy of his serious effort, but most of them were mere accessories of a geometry practiced for amusement. But when the Romans assaulted them by sea and land, the Syracusans were stricken dumb with terror. They thought that nothing could withstand so furious an onset by such forces. But Archimedes began to ply his engines, and shot against the land forces of the assailants all sorts of missiles and immense masses of stones, which came down with incredible din and speed. Nothing whatever could ward off their weight. At the same time, huge beams were suddenly projected over the ships from the walls, which sank some of them with great weights plunging down from on high. Others were seized at the prow by iron claws, or beaks like the beaks of cranes, drawn straight up into the air and then plunged stern foremost into the depths, or were turned round and round by means of engineering within the city and dashed upon the steep cliffs that jutted out beneath the wall of the city, with great destruction of the fighting men on board who perished in the wrecks. Frequently, too, a ship would be lifted out of the water into mid-air, whirled hither and thither as it hung there, a dreadful spectacle, until its crew had been thrown out and hurled in all directions, when it would fall empty upon the walls or slip away from the clutch that had held it. As for the engine which Marcellus was bringing up on the bridge of ships, while it was still some distance off in its approach to the wall, a stone of 10 talents weight was discharged at it, then a second and a third. Some of these, falling upon it with a great din and surge of wave, crushed the foundation of the engine, so that Marcellus, in perplexity, ordered his ships to sail back as fast as they could, and his land forces to retire. And so then, in a council of war, it was decided to come up under the walls while it was still night, if they could, for the ropes which Archimedes used in the engines, since they imparted great impetus to the missiles cast, would, they thought, send them flying over their heads, but would be ineffective at close quarters, where there was no place for the cast. Archimedes, however, as it seemed, had long before prepared for such an emergency engines with a range adapted to any interval. When, therefore, the Romans came up under the walls, thinking themselves unnoticed, once more they encountered a great storm of missiles. Huge stones came tumbling down upon them almost perpendicularly, and the walls shot out arrows at them from every point. They therefore retired again. Marcellus made his escape, and jesting with his own artificers and engineers said, "Let us stop fighting against this geometrical Briareus, who uses our ships like cups to ladle water from the seas, and with the many missiles which he shoots against us all at once, outdoes the 100-handed monsters of mythology." For in reality, all the rest of the Syracusans were but a body for the designs of Archimedes, and his the one soul moving and managing everything. For all other weapons lay idle, and his alone were then employed by the city both in offense and defense. In the end, the Romans became so fearful, whenever they saw a bit of rope or a stick of timber projecting a little over the wall, they cried out, "There it is! Archimedes is training some engine upon us," and turned their backs and fled. First freedom, and then glory. When that fails, wealth, vice, corruption. The Roman Empire is said to have followed this path, and that downfall inspired Thomas Cole's fantastic 1830s paintings, The Course of Empire.